Hello? Can anyone around here speak basketball?
There it is.
It's the Confederacy of Dunks Basketball Podcast.
We're going back to back. Welcome to the Confederacy of Dunks
Basketball Podcast.
I am your host, Freddie Rivas, and who are you, sir, that's harmonizing with me?
That would be your producer, Matt Duncan. Freddie, how are you doing?
I think I'm doing okay in spite of the situation, but let's give some folks some much needed information. If they want to follow us on our many platforms, how might they do that, Matt?
Well, you can go to dunkspodcast.com. We've got all our links there on the right for iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and Player FM. There's so many ways that you can listen to the podcast. Subscribe so you don't have to keep checking in. We'll just, you'll get sent the episode when it's ready.
Talk to me.
Yeah, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook and even YouTube. If you like to watch our episodes with a little sound bar going up and down, I sometimes do a fun wave. I try to change it up every once in a while.
Good.
We're just trying to get those 100,000 subscribers.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if people, they want to go above and beyond and they actually want to contribute, and be, let's say, an early investor before we, are bigger and more powerful than Joe Rogan.
That would probably be our Patreon, which you can go to patreon.com/dunkspodcast. We also have a link for it on our website. But if you want to subscribe to that, then you'll get some exclusive content, you'll get early episodes, and you'll help us, work on the next merch. Are those scarves going to come? We don't know.
We don't know. And and last but not least, if you're, like so many other people right now, not really allowed to leave your home.
Correct.
But hey, you said, hey, I want to wear a toque in here.
Yeah.
What might you do? How might you get a toque to wear inside your house? Because you should only be leaving if it's extremely important and social distancing as well. You know what?
There are more Confederacy of Dunks toques than there is toilet paper. So what you want to do is pay $20 a head top. You're going to stay inside, put this on, and don't worry about it feeling a bit warm in here. That head ain't going to get itchy. These are anti-itch toques, my friends.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. That's that about covers it for the toque.
Yeah.
For all the toque stuff, but I think anyone listening to this podcast might be wondering about what's going on with us. And I don't know, Matt. We're in the same situation as everyone else.
We are, yeah.
I think we're scared. We're curious. We're hopeful. We're trying to deal with this self-isolation, this social distancing.
I'm still in, I think, like this weird, giddy kind of half denial. Like I'm taking everything seriously about it, but there's like a part of me that, like, being stuck inside, I'm like, this can't be real, right? Like I can't really be in the midst of a pandemic, but we are, and we really have to be smart about it. Just as a reminder to everyone, when the dominoes really started to drop, the Raptors played the Utah Jazz, and then 2 days later, Rudy Gobert was tested positive after he really made a fool of himself, being like coughing on mics and whatnot. And then Donovan Mitchell got tested to be positive as well. Now, the thing with Donovan Mitchell is he had no symptoms, and there's a lot of people that don't. So that's why we're supposed to stay inside, because you're just carrying that around and you're going to get other people sick who can't fight it. So that's the scariest part about it for me is, people thinking they can go to spring break and go swimming in, Clearwater, Florida. But, we have to keep this under wraps.
Yeah, that's right. And, we're in a situation where we got to listen to the smartest people in the room and the doctors and the scientists and be as responsible as we can, obviously.
Yeah.
And just from a basketball perspective, I'll be a bit honest here. Basketball is my escape. I love basketball, and it kind of takes me to a place of comfort when I'm experiencing anxiety. And I think, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I know a lot of basketball fans and Raptors fans. It was kind of the simultaneous thing of like, Rudy Gobert has COVID, and then the NBA is canceled, and then, all these major kind of international dominoes start to fall. And obviously basketball is not at the center of this story.
Yeah.
This story is so much bigger than basketball. Basketball is just one of many, many, many things that are affected by it. And the things that orbit around basketball are also affected by it, including, podcasters, writers, workers, all that sort of thing. So there's just so much to kind of focus on. And all that to say, we kind of decided that we thought it would be fun and maybe like mentally healthy for us to record some podcasts that we, have been wanting to do for a long time and are not exactly Raptors related. And, help us kill some time, and we'll hopefully help you kill some time.
Yeah. I mean,
during this period. So
yeah, we've got a big 2-part episode for episode 141. We do an extensive coaches rankings, 30 all the way to the number one coach. I think it's really good content. I think you guys did a great job, and we're going to release what you're listening to right now is part 1, and we're going to release part 2 tomorrow.
Well, Matt, I just want to thank you for giving me this outlet during this time and being such a sound whiz. It's good shit, honestly. And we laughed a bunch in this episode. And I'll say this too. We don't know how long this is going to go on. If anyone has any ideas, if they want us to do a certain type of basketball podcast, shoot us a tweet, shoot us a message, let us know. And we're going to hopefully pump out some content for everyone. And I think on that note, let's get this ultimate coach ranking, this 2-part episode started, shall we?
Sounds good, buddy.
Okay, here we are. Let's bring on guest number 1. He's one of the best producers in the whole wide world. I usually say he's one of the best producers in the city of Toronto, but I just feel like being a bit hyperbolic right now. No, he's a hilarious improviser. We don't agree on everything basketball-wise, but I feel like we always provoke each other in the right directions. Give it up at home as loud as you can for Matt McCready.
Yeah, ready to attack Jacques Vaughn for no real reason. Let's give him some hell. Glad to be here.
Spirit. Thanks for joining me during this.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. This is our I guess first pandemic pod. We're doing a giant coach ranking. I know you're into it. You actually did a coach ranking with us, I think maybe like 3 years ago. I think
it was 2 years ago. And one thing I remember about that is that I didn't feel super comfortable with critiquing X's and O's because I've never coached basketball at any level. So I just went with how well people develop players. And since he actively hurt people's development a lot by overplaying them, I put Tibbs, number 30, which everyone thought was crazy at the time. Oh, yeah. But now it seems like not such a bad idea.
Honestly, Tibbs, if you're listening, no regrets here on the COD podcast family. Okay, let's bring on guest number 2. He started this damn podcast. He named this podcast, actually. He's going through law school. He's going through law school at home right now. He's hilarious. He's amazing. He's also has a kind of a viral Facebook thing going on right now. He's doing a Sweet 16 of candy bars. For some reason, Smarties got in there. They're not a bar, but whatever, they made it in the list somehow. It's a pretty big oversight. But anyways, it's a really fun time if you can somehow not think about the Smarties, which for me I can't. But give it up at home for Kevin Dowse.
Wow, I had to like bite my tongue through all that. Just sitting there listening to hear you rail in your narrow-minded fashion, Freddie.
I didn't think I was going to say anything about the candy bars, and I exploded. No.
Apparently you had it buried for a long time.
It was a bit repressed. I hope you're doing well. I didn't mean to come at you like that. But, yeah,
I'm doing great. I lost a friend today, but otherwise doing great.
Dude, I love you. I love you all, actually. And for anyone who's listening, I love all of you as well. Let's get going here on this giant coach ranking. I think I'm going to give you guys just a quick primer on what I was thinking. I'm a huge fan of the Dunked On podcasts network. Obviously, Nate Duncan and Daniel LaRue are some of the best, most kind of detailed podcasters out there. And for a couple years running now, they've done a bunch of kind of huge idea podcasts. One that I really love is a mock draft podcast they do. I think it's like 3 or 4 episodes. They do a whole off season and draft the whole league. It's so fun. Another one they do is they actually rank all of the coaches. I think this year it might have been with John Hollinger and not Daniel LaRue. And so it was John Hollinger and Nate Duncan. And they ranked all the coaches 30 through 1. And it's something we've done before as well. And it's just kind of a fun exercise to do. So what I did was I set up a poll, and shout out to friend of the podcast and guest of the podcast, Andre DePape, who made a much easier poll to fill out. And we actually got some feedback, and we got some contributors. So we have all of the coaches, all of the current coaches in the NBA ranked from 30 to 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through some of my criteria, and McCready and Dowse, Kevin Dowse, I'm gonna let you guys just have a response to my criteria and let me know what you think, and then we'll kind of get popping. Okay. So first and foremost, let me just let me read out what I think matters. As far as ranking these coaches. Sorry, I seem to have kind of like lost my criteria ranking sheet here. Hold on a second, guys. Okay, got it. So yeah, the first one is kind of like winning. So the idea there is unambiguous winning. It's not to punish the people who haven't had a chance to win, but I feel like winning is the name of the game. So it's just winning, regular season winning and postseason winning. Obviously, the postseason winning is ranked higher. The second category I had was kind of like player development. So this is, obviously a nuanced thing. You're going to have drafting in there. You're going to have player relation. A lot of things kind of come into that, how they are dealing with the situation they're in. And then I have, this is probably the most vague category, but style. So what they're known for, are they a progressive coach? Adaptation. So that's, regular season adaptation, in-game adaptation. Obviously playoff adaptation is the most important there. But fame, McCready referenced a guy like Tom Thibodeau. He was famous for a defense at a time, but then he kind of expired and he got famous for overplaying players. So that's, this is a very, I would say, kind of, porous category, probably the most nuanced. And then the last one I have is contextual success. There's a huge difference between a coach like a Larry Brown who would be brought in to shape some guys up and get them to the playoffs, and a coach that comes in like Steve Kerr who comes in and this team is fully ready to go, and he allows it to hit another gear. So there's different jobs within the 30 teams. I think I've kind of monologued enough there. Kevin, I'll go to you first. Do you think there's anything I missed Or maybe is there too much crossover on any of the categories?
No, I don't think so. I think the fame one's interesting because you can be famous for bad reasons, and so that was sort of an interesting consideration in there. But I found it sort of became a useful that and the context categories became sort of useful tiebreakers. If I like ranked someone and I was like, oh wait, there's no way those guys are the same, and then I could sort of jimmy around with those. Personal disclosure, I was maybe too generous with the wins column. Basically, if you won a chip, you get 10 out of 10 in my book. So I'm sure that'll come out in the rankings at some point.
Yeah, I tried to stay consistent as I went through the rankings as well, like with my own judgment. And championships was something that was kind of tough, right? Because it's the ultimate achievement. But, how do you weight someone who's won multiple championships versus someone who's just won one or that sort of thing? Or obviously a coach that hasn't really had the chance to win a championship. But again, there's a whole kind of continuum of what opportunities do you get as a coach and how dependent is that on how good you are, right?
Yeah. I think the multiples roll over into the other categories like development and system.
Right. Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm going to go to you, McCready. Is there, anything you feel like I didn't consider or anything we should know about your ranking?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the list was good. There were some coaches where I just don't know enough about them. And so I would just, give them basically the same mark in every category,
Mm-hmm.
Like basically if I wasn't entirely sure about their history and did some research and didn't really come to any strong conclusions, I would just be like, okay, cool. Out of like 1 to 10, how excited would I be if this person was named Raptors coach, assuming Nick Nurse retired or whatever?
Right.
And so, I would just give them a 6 out of everything out of 10 or a 3 or whatever. So I did that with like 5 coaches maybe. Other than that, I think like maybe a category for best nickname or would have been good, like a nickname out of 10. Anything that can get, Brad Stevens number 1 is
totally.
What I
we
want.
definitely have to skew this graph towards my nemesis a bit more in the future. Brad Stevens. Okay, well, I think without further ado, let's get popping here. Duncan, are you ready? Do you want to play our special sound effect for the worst coach in the NBA? Number 30th, the lowest ranked coach, and this is out of 40, coming in, the only coach coming in less than 10. With a 9.6, we have just a month and a half into the job, Mike Miller of the New York Knicks. So, McCready, I'll go to you first, and I'll just ask this. Did you know that Mike Miller was a coach in the NBA before this podcast?
I did, because I thought it was the player Mike Miller when I first saw the name. And so I looked into him, and no, I didn't know. I don't really know much about this guy. I don't really care for him too much.
Okay.
I feel like he's done an okay job with the Knicks, though. I feel like they've done better since he took over.
I mean, I was, this is one of those scenarios. It's so hard to rank. Like I looked at his record with the Knicks and, he's lost 10 more games than he's won, but also the Knicks roster is insanely bad. So I generally skewed towards ranking people pretty low if they haven't proven themselves yet. I found people with really short resumes and people with really long resumes. It's the hardest to rank. But generally I favored experience. Dowse, where are you at with Mike Miller, coach of the New York Knicks?
Also had to look up whether he was Mike Miller, the former player.
Sure.
So I think that speaks to him a little bit. For me, I was trying to just make sure I separated the coach of the Knicks from the Knicks generally, at least a little bit, because it's so hard to get that Knicks stink off of you. They've won a couple fun games, and RJ's had a couple like big moments. So there's that. But I think just looking at the numbers, you can't rank this guy terribly high despite even the short window, because there's just it's just all bad there. There's just so little to take away from any goodness in that scenario.
Well, I think we've been cruel enough to Mike Miller. And I don't know how much we need to elaborate on Mike Miller. So let's head on to the next pick. Duncan, if you would. All right.
I love the crowd in the background of that.
Oh, yeah. The crowd in the background. You need the detail, right?
Yes.
Coming in 29th.
Type in some post-production crowd sounds for the entire podcast, like we're on a draft floor.
Yeah. Duncan, is that okay with you? Like just make it seem a little bit more raucous?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You want me to just put lots of chatter in the background to really
Sure.
make it like unlistenable. That'd be
Just get some wild sounds from like, I don't know, like a wave pool or something.
If I need to go to the washroom at any point during the podcast, just say that I'm on a call from a general manager for some breaking news.
Oh, that's
a minute.
All right. So I actually had this coach as my worst coach. Coming in at number 29th is Jim Boylan with 10 out of 40. So I'll lead here. I give Jim Boylan a 5 out of 40. I don't know which category I gave him a 2 in, but basically everything I broke down, he was a 1. He to me, he's bad at everything there is to be about a coach. He seems out of touch with his players. Doesn't seem like he's progressive in the NBA. I understand he had a good college career. He doesn't seem to have the ear of the players. He hasn't won. I'll go to you first, McCready. You have anything to say on Boylan? You gave him a 7 out of 40.
I gave him a 7. I mean, I don't love him. He's the funniest coach in the NBA.
Yeah, okay.
Him calling timeouts with 40 seconds left in the game, down 11, while his players just visibly roll their eyes and the announcing crew makes fun of him. It's like one thing you could say about Boylan is that he doesn't give a shit what people think about him. So maybe that's a positive in some sort of way. It could also be a negative in almost every way as well.
Right.
So Boylan, a bit of a disaster so far, and it's like there's so many young players in Chicago, and none of them have really broken out, except you might be able to say that Chris Dunn has broken out as a defender. I mean, it's not like any of the players he got in Chicago were slam dunks, but even a guy like Thad Young, who's come in there and played great for his entire career, not as great for his entire career, but has been pretty good for his entire career, has fallen off a bit since joining Chicago. So he clearly doesn't motivate his players at all. So I don't know. Thumbs down.
Yeah, I think development is where I gave him a 2 instead of a 1, because I was kind of like, well, Wendell Carter Jr. is something. And Markkanen hasn't become Bargnani. I think that's why. I mean, I probably should have gave him a 1. He's my worst coach in the NBA. Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember what I scored him, but I hate this guy.
You gave him a 9, so okay. You're actually generous as hell.
Generous, yeah. I think all of my scores were actually pretty generous, if I'm recalling correctly. But I mean, like, so where Boylan gets some points for me, I think I might have given him a little more on the development side because Markkanen, like you say, he's not nothing. And Dunn isn't nothing. Like there's some young guys there. It's like, okay, these guys are maybe going to be good in a couple of years when they get a new coach. But like he hasn't completely ruined them. But I think I also gave him fame points because he's literally just famous for being such an asshole. Like he's got to be one of the coaches I read about the most because like I can't believe what else he's done. He's in one of my favorite memes of the year when like he's screaming at Zach LaVine and Zach LaVine just like looks at him, looks up at the scoreboard and says, I've got like 40 fucking points and like just doesn't care about him at all. So I gave, that's where the fame points for me actually boosted some people's scores.
That's amazing. And I love how you took fame as like, if you're famous at all, you get points. Okay, let's move on to number 28. Duncan, if you would. Coming in at 10.2, we got Ryan Saunders. Dowse, I'll lead with you. You got anything to say about Ryan Saunders?
Again, so this is my fame category skewing it. He's got the family fame. There's a bit of that, but generally having a pretty tough time. Like this happens every year in Minnesota, where it's like, oh, this team has like good players. This could be something, and then it's just never anything. And even after their good, fun start to the year, it fell apart. Like maybe it'll get better with D'Lo and Towns, but God knows what's happening there. So I wasn't able to really give him much because I just honestly can't see what he's doing, if anything.
Yeah. Good. I mean, you gave him a 10. I gave him a 13, and McCready gave him a 7. And I'm wondering why I didn't rank him lower, because again, he's one of those guys that just really, the winning isn't there. The development doesn't seem to be there. Kind of nothing seems to be there, and it's hard to tell if it's all roster, but he's had a bit of time to do some stuff. McCready, anything to say about Saunders?
I can't figure out a single great thing he's done. I mean, I guess like maybe a bit of optimism on this, like we're just slamming Ryan Saunders so bad, is that his shot selection for his team is good. His team's taking a ton of threes, they're going to the basket. But there's no one on the team who can really shoot other than Towns. So, I mean, it's tough to do anything in the NBA these days if your team sucks shooting the basketball. Obviously, Russell's changed that a little bit, but Russell is such a fucking pylon defensively. You can't really do anything with him defensively either. So, I don't know. I don't, he's very young. Maybe he'll get better. But honestly, if he was announced as a new Raptors coach, I would probably just like sit in my room for a bit.
I really like that metric, Matt. I really like that metric of how would I feel if he was the Raps coach.
It definitely brings it to a personal level where you're kind of like, wait, these are my guys. No, they can't. This coach can't be Saunders. But yeah, I mean, just to not totally crap on this guy, I think with the start of the season, it seemed okay. Towns had a career, a couple weeks, and Wiggins was maybe potentially turning a corner. And I think Towns getting injured, the team never really recovered from that. Then they made the trade, and it was like something like 9 new players. I think really they need a training camp with D'Lo and Towns and some better roster building. But again, you kind of have to play the cards you're dealt. So not a ton of sympathy for him. But let's move on to number 27, Duncan, if you would. That was like the quietest version of that. Yeah, it's like I feel like it's like getting further away from us. Okay. Coming in at number 27, 11 out of 40. Let's give some love to Jacques Vaughn.
The guy we for some reason talked the most about on the preamble before we started recording.
Yeah,
That's
he's
right.
a bit of a Cinderella getting this high in the rankings.
Maybe it's because of me. I gave him a 14. Somebody gave him an 18. But Dowse, you gave him a 7, and Matt, you gave him, or McCready, you gave him an 8. McCready, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, he was really bad when he coached before. When he was the coach of the Orlando Magic, he was a complete disaster, and he hasn't really coached much, since then. So that's where my bad review mostly comes from. But here's an interesting fact about Jacques Vaughn, the player, that I found out as I was doing some research. He set the NBA record for consecutive field goal misses to open a season. Can you guess, between everyone here, the three of you, what that number is?
I'm going to say 36.
Yeah, I was going to say 30.
Duncan? Oh, all
Sorry?
right.
You want me
22. You're both too pessimistic.
Fair enough, yeah.
I mean, 22 shots is a lot of shots.
That is a long time, yeah.
I kind of thought maybe he was taking like 2 or 3 shots a game and like getting benched a lot. And, so it was one of those scenarios where it's over the course of like 3 months.
The funny thing is that was also the year where he shot a career high from the field, 47% for the season. And that's all I have to say about Jacques Vaughn, the coach.
Nice. Yeah. So he never missed a shot and he never coached a good game after that slump. Yeah. I also kind of just ranked him on, the biggest part of his resume is Orlando. It's not very good. Kevin, did you say anything about Jacques Vaughn?
No, I mean, it's pretty much a shrug, right? It's like he was bad in Orlando. He's not going to be there next year in Brooklyn. So good luck to you.
Good luck to you. Okay. Let's keep it rolling here. Duncan, if you would give me the cue for the 26th ranked coach. Coming in with 14 out of 40, we have Luke Walton. Kevin, I'll let you begin on Luke Walton. What do you have to say?
I'll just start with a quick ugh.
Yeah.
Just don't like this guy in general, but beyond that, if we're looking at basketball stuff, seems to be getting a ton of credit. This was like a wrong fame score because, I don't know, people love him for no reason. And he's like unimaginative and alienating players and calling up poor plays to end games. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, when's his leash end?
Yeah. I think that, so me and you both had him with 12 out of 40. McCready had him at 4. Someone gave him a 24. And I think really with Luke Walton, what I was kind of looking at, like, resume wise, is everything with the Lakers is really bad, right? Because you have young players and, poor development of those players, a couple lost seasons when you think about Russell not handling Kobe well. And really it's just the Golden State run when Steve Kerr had the back injury. And I'm kind of, I don't think it's the biggest accomplishment, but I also don't feel like it's nothing. And I think that team sure could have come pretty close to coaching itself, but I'm not really one of those people anyways. Like I don't really think LeBron, I've never been a part of the camp where players fully coach themselves. Like I think high IQ matters. But anyways, yeah. So that's the only reason he's not the worst coach in the NBA.
Last 15 years that's failed with LeBron James as a player on this team. So
there's that too.
That's true.
And
yeah, no.
The Golden State thing to me is like, I gotta sip my coffee. Can you take the wheel on this straight portion of the highway for a minute? Right.
Yes. No. And I mean, like, that's why I think just the winning perspective, I'm just kind of defending myself for having him 12 out of 40, because I think really he's the worst coach in the NBA, but he has that little small nugget of winning, which in my opinion, those other guys below him don't have. McCready, you gave him a 4. I'll let you just go for it and slam Luke.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, like, this is where my how excited would I be if this guy was the coach came into effect the most. Whereas if like Luke Walton was announced as the Raptors head coach, I would stop following the team. He's a creep. I know hasn't really been spoken about so far, but the guy, is assaulted a woman and then left the Los Angeles Lakers and then the Kings because they're the worst run organization in, if not the NBA, all of sports. They hired him. Way to go, Vlade Divac. Way to pass up on Luka Doncic and sign Luke Walton in the same offseason. From the X's and O's point of view, when he played the Raptors the other day, they were down 3 with 10 seconds left and didn't even put Buddy Hield on the floor, the NBA 3-point champion. You don't put him on the floor, and instead you decide to create an off-the-dribble shot for Nemanja Bjelica from 3. Like, what the hell are you doing, you idiot? So, a terrible person, only in the league because of nepotism. as both a player and a coach. A complete shitbag of the human being. 4 out of 40.
Here.
Love it. Love it.
And I think, this is going to represent hopefully a turning point in the podcast, because I feel like that's appropriately negative, but it's going to slowly get better here as the coaches get better. But
I'm
this
sorry,
next
I don't
one.
mean to bring it down in these times,
No, not at all.
People should be dumped on.
It's McCready. I hope that in no way comes across as any kind of scolding. I mean it when I say it's appropriately so.
Great.
But let's move on to coach number 25 here, Duncan, if you will. Now, to me, when I think about funny coaches, this guy is the one. So coming in with a score of 15.2 out of 40, we got the all-star, the one and only J motherfucking B Bickerstaff.
I can't believe
This
it took
guy,
so long to get here.
What's that?
I can't believe it took so long to get to him.
I know. I'm so proud of the guy. He's 25th. Like, he's on the up and ups. Like, I feel like JB is Gil from The Simpsons. Like, JB, like, and he's been. But that's the thing. You go over his record, and you're like, when he's taken over some teams, like, he's done a pretty good job, but he just always, like, he gets let go shortly after.
He's given a house on fire, and like
he is.
Maybe he saves the living room, and then like, get out of here, man.
I know. Oh man. I'm gonna go on JB first. I think the thing that impressed me the most, and this isn't like a backwards, or a backhanded compliment, but I think that he took one game from the Warriors in the 2015-2016 season with the Houston Rockets, which is they're nowhere near what they are now. This was before D'Antoni took over the team, and he took a game from that team, and that team was one of the most incredible teams we've ever seen, and JB was thrown into that situation, and the Rockets finished with a pretty good record under his watch as well. So again, we're still at coach number 25 here, so it's not crazy compliments. But McCready, I'll go to you on JB. You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the funniest name out of any coach, JB Bickerstaff. It sounds like a John Mulaney stand-up character. Yeah, I don't know, not the best resume out there, but not the worst, to be honest. He got a lot of flack for the Grizzlies last year and all that stuff, but he did a pretty good job with Bruno. He got something out of Bruno. It's the only coach in the NBA to have done that, and he actually, I think he did a good job of Valanciunas. He put up the best numbers of his career when they had DeLon right there, so actually someone on that team who could feed the post. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's. I was like, I'm surprised it took us so long to get here, but it's only because he is such a punching bag. But I think 25 might seem kind of right for him. The stat I was most surprised by JB Bickerstaff is that he's only 41. Like, I thought he's been around forever.
Yeah,
like, how is that even possible? So, anyways, that's
all. And somehow Jack is younger than him.
Jack's 35.
Yeah, Jack's 35. It's crazy. Kevin, you got anything to tell us about JB Bickerstaff?
About poor old JB Bickerstaff? I mean, what can you say about this guy? He's like taken the most lumps of any coach, because he's always interim coach, for one thing. He very rarely gets to go a full go round with a team. People seem to like him. People seem to want to play for him. I don't know if he's ever coached a team that was particularly great at all. And I don't know how much of that is his fault, but like, we haven't heard about a locker room brawl in Cleveland this season. And I feel like part of that has to go to him. Cause it sure, it sure wasn't.
Did Saul hate playing for him? Am I wrong? Or is
maybe.
Or that was just Fizdale.
That was Fizdale, yeah.
Oh, that was Fizdale. Okay.
Okay, my bad.
And that was a weird one. Well, JB, I hope at one point you can save up and get your own car, and you don't have to drive these lemons around. And just hope for the best for JB. But let's move on to the coach number 24 on our list. Duncan, would you give me the beautiful NBA sting?
I love that you have to keep calling for it.
Oh,
you make my job so easy here. I don't even have to try to fit it in.
Drop
it right here.
Oh, I thought you were going to drop it again.
Oh, no.
No, it's good you did. It's good you did. Okay, so coming in at number 24, 15.6 out of 40. We have a very famous coach. I'm sure everyone knew his resume off by heart. Lloyd Pierce. McCready, I'll let you start on Lloyd Pierce. What do you got?
I can't believe you referred to him as very famous coach Lloyd Pierce. Are you being sarcastic?
Yes. Yeah, he was.
Okay.
I thought he was potentially the least known coach on this list besides Mike Miller.
I honestly just didn't know if I was being if Lloyd Pierce was very popular. I mean, I don't know. The Atlanta Hawks. How there's such a weird mixed bag. You could look at that team and be like, look what he's got out of Trae Young. He's that guy. Looks like. Obviously he is the worst defensive player possibly in the entire NBA with no hyperbole, but he's also one of maybe the top 6 or 7 most impactful offensive players in the NBA,
right?
Which is obviously such a floor-raising type of thing, and the team is complete garbage without him. And you can't blame him for the fact that their general manager didn't give him a second point guard on the roster for the entire year because, Jeff Teague, washed up, Tide's spokesman, Jeff Teague, was such a big jump up from their previous point guard duties that they had there. So, I mean, if we've seen anything from the Raptors, when you don't have a good point guard out there, it's tough to do anything this season with all the injuries they've had. So, I don't know. I think he's okay. That's my general view of him.
Yeah, me and you both had him at 17, so I feel like my logic is the same as you. With guys like Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter and Trae Young, and obviously they just got Capella and they already have Collins. I think this team just needs time, and Lloyd Pierce, we just haven't seen it yet. So I'm totally with you. It seems like the makings of something, but. Yeah, me and you both gave him 17. Dowse,
Reddish seems to be looking better as the season goes on. There's something,
Yeah, totally. Kevin, I feel like maybe you got a little less love for Lloyd Pierce. You gave him 11.
Wow, did I rank him that low?
You did.
That's I don't feel towards him that lowly. But I think record is just how can you look at his record and really rank him super high? But his player development's great. I honestly feel like Atlanta is at least having fun, if not always fun to watch, although they're fun to watch sometimes,
That's a good point.
He's managing to handle development while also letting Vince Carter play too, which is, I think, really nice. It's nice for him in his retirement season. And I think I agree with you guys that, the cupboard's stocked for the future and we'll see what he can do with it. It's maybe still a little bit early and there's just still some missing pieces that you can't run a coherent full game of basketball with this team yet. So we'll see what it looks like over the coming years. If it starts to be repeated losing seasons, then I think we're going to see a little bit more, okay, he has good players, but he's not doing anything with them kind of situation.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Let's move on to coach.
One quick thing, Freddie, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm bringing this up. This has nothing to do with anything, but do either of you know what the JB and JB Bickerstaff stands for?
Just ballin', I think. No, I don't know. Do you know?
Shout out to local Toronto comedian John Blair. John Blair Bickerstaff.
Yeah,
really?
It's John Blair.
Wow.
I am not joking. It's John Blair.
Oh, wait, are you serious?
Yeah, I'm 100% not joking.
Oh, my God. Sorry. I just thought you made a funnier joke than I did.
No, it's exactly what it is.
That's
incredible.
And you know what? Since we're here, shout out to Toronto Improviser, who's not a big basketball fan, so this isn't as big of a deal to them, but Chris Middleton. The first time I told them that they share a name with an NBA star, they said, oh. But to me, it's a much bigger deal.
I tell him that all the time.
You got it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this one's going to be fun. I think this is our biggest split so far, as far as all three of us kind of have some different takes. Duncan, would you hit me with the beautiful cue? There's something about this relationship between me and Duncan. I don't know. It's both beautiful and haunting. Okay. We'll start. I'll start with number 23rd ranked coach Monty Williams, who's coming in at 18.6, because it looks like I had him the highest. And where was he? Yeah. So I had Monty Williams. No, I'm sorry. Kevin actually had him higher than me. So Kevin, you have Monty Williams with a 22 out of 40. Talk to me.
Well, the thing about this is that I forget where Monty Williams coaches. So you're going to have to refresh me real quick here. Phoenix Suns.
But he coached he coached the
Pels for a while.
Yeah.
Which is what always messes me up. No, he's just sort of a very middle of the road coach. Like, Booker's good, and Baines had this weird breakout year, and he handled Ayton being injured and all that kind of stuff. And the Suns are like not as bad as they've been, but he also doesn't have a ton to work with, and he's having players be injured and suspended and all this stuff all over the place. Now he's dealing with Oubre being out. So I just sort of gave him some love, I think, in terms of juggling with constantly shifting circumstances, which was part of his tenure in New Orleans too. Just like he sort of hasn't had a solid, firm footing to stand on at any point in his career.
Yeah, totally. He reminds me of kind of like a Dwayne Casey before he got the Toronto job for a long time.
Yes.
Someone who's maybe
totally
had little fits and starts, but hasn't had like a long contract, hasn't really had job security in a meaningful way, and then also hasn't really had major players to work with.
He had didn't he have Davis in New Orleans?
He did, yeah. Sorry, that's actually a good point. He did have Davis.
And he was their coach for 5 years.
Yeah,
5 years with Davis, or 5 years during
5 years in general. I believe he's probably started in 2010. So was that Chris Paul year maybe?
Yeah.
And he went to 2015. So he was basically a part of a rebuilding era. And then when that famous time when Davis first made it to
the 8th seed.
Yeah, and they got swept by the Warriors. Again, pretty ridiculous 14-15 Warriors team. But
and a couple of those games were pretty close.
Yeah, his playoff record's 2-8.
Not great.
Yeah. You had him as the lowest among us three, with 17 out of 40. I had him at 17 out of 40. You had a 15 out of 40, McCready. So are you just kind of like, he hasn't proven himself?
I don't think he's necessarily hasn't proven. I think he's got a pretty long resume. He's got 400 games coaching in the NBA. I just feel like this is kind of like a guy to me. Like if he got hired as the Raptors coach, I'd be like, all right, I'd be okay with it, but I'd also be like, I just don't think he's going to innovate the world. I think comparing him to Dwayne Casey is a good call. That's all. That's all I have to say about him.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's move on to coach. Where are we now? Pardon me. We are coach 22 on the list. Duncan, would you give it to me? James Borrego coming in with 19.2 out of 40. So I gave James Borrego the highest on the list. I guess I just feel like he's making the most of his situation, and I don't know, maybe I didn't punish him enough for not winning, but I like PJ Washington. I kind of think he's doing a good job with Rozier this year. And I also feel like, if you're judging someone on situation, it's hard to think of a worse GM than Michael Jordan or a worse owner than Michael Jordan. And I think that
it's easier to think of a worse owner than Michael Jordan, but I'll with James Dolan out there. But
I'm sorry. That's true. You can't ever forget about Dolan. But Michael Jordan is his own specific brand of bad and cheap as well, with not paying Kemba and just not putting your team in a good situation to win. So I feel like Borrego's done okay. Let's go to you, Kev. You gave him an 18 out of 40.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Borrego. He's got some good things going. Graham is definitely promising. They play hard defense. They're in every game. They're super duper scrappy. It sort of gives me vibes of Casey's first season with the Raptors, where we were just god awful, but it was more fun to watch for the first time in forever. I feel like that's a real positive sign for Charlotte, because even with Kemba the last couple of years, Charlotte wasn't a particularly fun watch. And I feel like that's turning around. I feel like there's some life in the franchise, and it's a tough road when you've got Jordan, who's your owner, who thinks they're right all of the time, and you're going to get blamed for every bump in the road. So you gotta sort of have that looking over your shoulder while you're trying to maintain some sort of sense of authority, I guess, but also winning over your players and developing a good system.
All good points. McCready, I think you had him a little bit lower than us too.
First of all, did you guys know that the JB in James Borrego stands for John Blair? Secondly, Charlotte, I don't know, the Hornets seem like they might have been able to make the playoffs last year, but they didn't, and that's kind of where I'm at. To make the playoffs in the East isn't exactly a monumental task. Kemba's done really well, and in Boston, he's really contributed to winning there. They were really bad without him, and they had him last year in Charlotte, and they couldn't do anything really with him. And their roster isn't that great this year at all, and so I don't know. I think he's okay, but I don't feel super highly for him either way.
Fair enough. Okay, number 21 on the list. Duncan, would you give it to me? He's coached for a couple teams. He's a hard-nosed guy. He got smashed by Nick Nurse in the Raptors in round 1. We got Steve Clifford coming in. Yeah, we were good. 20.8 out of 40. Let's start with you, McCready. What do you think about Clifford?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'd like to see Clifford with a team that rocks, because he's always had these super flawed rosters. He's been in the league for a while, You obviously coached the Bobcats forever and had a mix of success there. One of those Bobcat teams won 48 games.
Yeah, I think that was the year where it was with Batum, and it's maybe they're putting it together.
Totally. But they never got past the first round in any of the years that he was there. Clearly, he can get a team to compete defensively. I think he had a pretty good. Obviously, he was so outrageously outgunned in that Magic Rap series last year. And the Raps did beat them in 5, but they obviously won that first game. And if Kawhi Leonard didn't go insane in a couple of those games, because he was fucking amazing in that series, then who knows? The Raptors maybe would have lost. Maybe that series could have gone even 6 or 7. So I don't know. This is the part of the list because pretty much for the next 7 or 8 guys, they're going to be I don't know, they're okay. And here we go again. Clifford, pretty good.
Yeah, we're definitely we're kind of merging out of the like not enough experience territory, and we're merging into the mixed bag mixed bag category. I feel like Clifford, was similar to Borrego, and kind of like there's something there. The guy clearly has talent, but there's been like fits and starts, and he hasn't really put himself on the map in like any meaningful way. But at the same time, he's had a couple different jobs, so maybe he's just a really good interview. But I think he probably has some good basketball ideas, and it just kind of hasn't been able to like sink in. Kevin, what do you got on Steve Clifford?
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. I mean, like, I haven't seen him with a full complement of a healthy team with like a bunch of weapons. There's a couple of his Charlotte teams should have been close, but I feel like Batum, who was like such a necessary glue guy in that system, was always like hurt, not playing at 100%, that kind of a thing. But he took an Orlando team with basically no offensive weapons. And I mean, Boucher obviously is great, but like they're not.
But I mean, Vooch was considered garbage before Clifford got there. Like people were
also
like,
very true,
contract to have to dump. And same with who's their point guard, the little guy who hit the shot to win.
Augustine.
Augustine, yeah. I mean, he was considered, pretty trash up until that point too. And those
absolutely
were his like two best offensive players, on that team.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe I should have had him a little bit higher. I don't know.
And I mean, you look at that team to like close out the year. They had the best record to close out the season besides the Raps, I think. And then they took the team that destroyed the Golden State Warriors and ruined their franchise for a season. They took that team to 5 games. So that's saying something.
And in fairness to Clifford as well, I think losing Isaac this year was a pretty big blow to an emerging Magic team. Like, Isaac was a candidate.
Isaac rocks.
He's awesome.
He's great. He's great.
And I think even though Pascal kind of like pushed through, Isaac did do a pretty good job on him. And kind of like McCready was saying in that Magic series, or I guess kind of like you're both saying, it's not, I don't think the Magic could have won the series, but Kyle Lowry, and I think it's game 3, has that really important late game like poke rebound because the Magic stormed back. So I think Clifford's got some gumption. So Maddie, if you could give me that sting for our 20th ranked coach. Coming in at number 20 is Taylor Jenkins, head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. So he's just has this year, which is pretty impressive. But I don't know. I'll start with you, Kevin. What do you have to say about Taylor Jenkins?
Yeah, I mean this is a case where the recency can help you. It's a pretty limited sample size, but what a fun sample size! Like, he gets to piggyback a little bit on Ja's highlights and on the Grizzlies still being in that 8th seed. So it's all pretty unlikely. A lot of unknowns coming into this season. Like, what are these young guys and rookies going to do? We've got these old vets that like have never quite had to be veterans yet. Like, JV is that vet status now, but this is sort of the first time he's in that position. And you've got to deal with the whole Iguodala headache too, dealing with that to start for like a way longer period of the season than I would have expected.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I thought he just kept everyone pretty focused, and everyone seems to be enjoying basketball, and especially when the whole franchise and fan base and everyone, I'm sure, thought this was going to be a much longer rebuilding process. For them to be an 8th seed, like even if they don't make it, is just a great place to be starting from.
Yeah, and I think when a coach starts that well, it's super promising with a young core and so many pieces. And Memphis, I think you hit a huge point there. Just they as an organization, their decision making is so sound, and he seems like a really good coach. And I think the recency did help him. It would have been nice to see him coach a playoff series. If Memphis made it, obviously they'd be coaching against the Lakers, and you got to contextually judge that. But yeah, McCready, how do you feel about Taylor Jenkins, Memphis Grizzlies head coach?
I kind of like if I went from the would I be excited if he took the Raptors job point of view, I'd be very excited for Taylor Jenkins. First coach on our list who is younger than me, making me feel very like a loser. Sure. He was the assistant for Bud for 5 years, and then with the Hawks, and then again with the Bucks last year. I love guys that like just fucking grind their asses off to become head coaches and aren't like the son of somebody and then they just like become a coach.
Right.
I feel like that kind of means something to me. He's 35 and he's already won the Western Conference Coach of the Month. I think like nearly every single person in Memphis is overachieving. You could say that Valanciunas is underachieving a little bit, but he's really just not that much of a focal point in what kind of offense they're trying to run over there. I guess Bruno, you might be able to throw in that, but I mean, he's also just, whatever. I don't know. I'd be pretty excited if he was a coach for the team.
Me too. Yeah. Cheers to Taylor Jenkins, everybody. Right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
All right, let's
if I had to cast him in a sitcom, he would be like the best friend of our main character. He'd come in and just say like hi to the King of Kensington or whatever.
Oh, I like that. Hi to the King of Kensington. Nothing like just a good, friendly archetype person who's like,
I decided that like since I don't have a lot to say about these middle coaches, I'm just going to say like how I would cast them. And Steve Clifford, I would cast as like a corrupt cop who's like nearing retirement and really has to make some decisions on whether this next thing he has to do is too corrupt for him. He decides not to. He decides to become a good cop.
Oh, Steve Clifford is full like how there's that book of like what's it called I'm messing this analogy up already so hard. But the what's the very famous like story where there's a wolf that blows down houses? Three Little Pigs.
The Big Bad Wolf?
Yes. There's a story from the wolf's perspective. Keep following me. If they did a story of Elmer Fudd's perspective, it could be Clifford. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Let's move on to the next coach.
I might be sobbing over here, Fred.
Okay, Duncan, could you give me the sting for coach number 19? Very interesting track record because he was part of an experiment. We got Brett Brown coming in here with 23 out of 40, part of the process. Obviously, lots of losing, lots of winning in the past couple of years, not so much in the playoffs. But I'll start with you. McCready. How do you feel about Brett Brown?
I think Brett Brown. I mean, to use the what's called Dwayne Casey, kind of seems a little Dwayne Casey-ish here. It's hard to say because, like, obviously he took the Raptors to the absolute limit last year. But they also lost the year before against that Boston team that they probably should have beat.
Right.
I kind of consider the playoffs maybe to be a wash, if not trending a little bit negative. There, obviously, he has some of the absolute worst records in the history of the NBA. For 3 years, the most he had was 19 wins, and he went 10-72 1 year. Yeah. And you could say well, they were tanking, but after a while, they could still try to win games and still be by far the worst. So they were just losing a lot of those games as well. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's a great coach.
Yeah, I think for me, we all actually had pretty similar scores on this one. But it seemed like the trend line is Kevin's a little bit higher than me, and I'm a bit higher than McCready, but we're pretty close here. But sorry for this one, I had 24. Kevin had 23 and McCready had 21. I thought he came in a little bit low on this list because I really think that although the losing accumulated, and I agree with all of your criticisms about him, McCready, but I think what happened in Philly with the process, with the losing, was particularly unique. Like, I think Hinkie kneecapped that team so hard. Anytime there was any momentum, he would trade somebody. Like, he didn't let, what's happening in Memphis right now, there's none of that in Philly. Like, he didn't mess around. He was like, hey, no momentum here for 3 solid years. That's what I'm doing. I'm accumulating picks. If anyone has one good game, I'm going to trade them for a second-round pick. So I think for Brown to have to coach throughout that, I mean, whatever. I guess his record is his record. But yeah, Kev, where are you? Where are you with Brett Brown?
Yeah, I think it's sort of an interesting case with the process, because I think for so long everyone was so afraid that he was going to get fired for being the coach during the process, and so I feel like a lot of analysts who are a lot of former coaches were like, really sort of beefing him up. Like, this guy is a good coach. Trust me, when he has a team, he's a good coach. And I feel like he had this reputation before he had even done anything. And now, like, he's had some really talented teams the last couple of years. Like, there's a lot of talent on these Sixers teams. And I agree with Matt. The fact that they didn't beat Boston 2 years ago was like, what? How? Honestly, like, he probably should have. Maybe I'm jumping too hard on Boston. They were a good team that year, but I think
they were
Philly
so injured though in that series.
Yeah,
and I mean, you could make the counter argument being that Philly was very young. Their best player.
True.
Although
That's true.
Redick, it was a solid bet, so I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe if it had gone to overtime in Game 7, like, we'd be talking a different story right now. But and they would have been in the conference finals. But I don't know about that. But I think that also there's the fact that Simmons can't shoot and won't shoot is like, at a certain point, you need to figure out a way that works somehow as a coach. And I know it's like a tough handicap, and maybe I'm being tough on him because Philly's sort of a rival, but I feel like that's, like, you got to figure out something more to do than just, like, shrug your shoulders about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
If I had to cast Brett Brown in a commercial, it would be this dad. He's got his daughter. They're packing all the stuff. It's all voiceless. There's no voices in this commercial. They're filling up the minivan. There's a lot of stuff, but it all fits in the van. And he drives her to her residence, and she gets out. They unpack the stuff, and they give like a nice hug and a goodbye, and he gets back in the car and he drives away, and it's kind of like a little bit dusky, and he just gets this smile on his face of like a job well done, and then it's like says like GMC at the end,
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, this next coach is a solid one because it by far has the most disparity. So I'm McCready. I'm going to be going to you first. But let's give him the same ado we give everyone else. Coming in at number 18, Duncan, would you give me the sting? So ranked with 24 out of 40, we got Scott Brooks. So I'm going straight to you, McCready. You gave Scott Brooks an 8 out of 40. So I'm just going to let you go.
Never even
because
that.
Kevin gave him a 28 and I gave him a 25. And yeah, there's no other score that's even less than 20. But yeah, the floor is all yours, man.
I don't know, man. Like,
it's also just a game. Who cares? But
yeah, I know. But what team has he ever coached that overachieved? Like, maybe that first year in like where Oklahoma City went on like the run to the conference finals, but like he had Durant, Harden, and Westbrook on the same team. They never won a championship. And Ibaka on the same team, like the perfect number 4 guy for those 3 guys. Never won a championship. He did okay in Washington that first year, when he went to the conference semifinals, but like, I don't know. I don't see it, man. Like, his winning percentage in the playoffs is like 52%. And, a pretty big sample size with the team that he had. Like, I don't know. I don't think it cuts it, man.
Yeah, I mean, part of my logic with Scott Brooks was that I think 52% winning percentage in the playoffs is kind of like okay, considering how it's always trending towards losing more games than you win. You know, because it's kind of like that, like a elimination sort of vibe. And I also feel like he had a lot of difficult personalities to deal with in Oklahoma, and you know, I don't less so with Harden. But I really do think that he kind of produced 2 MVPs, and you know, Ibaka, and obviously that's really good we're drafting with Presti, but he had these guys from early ages, so I feel like the development is where I give him most of my points. But as far as
the Oklahoma City Thunder would have won a championship if he didn't rely on playing Kendrick Perkins so much. Or if he ever staggered Durant and Westbrook instead of only ever playing them at the same time?
I think the staggering, I would penalize him for more, because the Perkins thing, I would say, is largely era specific. You know, the idea of playing 5 out like wasn't really, I mean, Van Gundy was doing, some people were doing certain things, but I think the going logic was that you needed 2 bruising bigs, and Perkins, you know, had success with Celtics and you know, he was one. It seemed like, I remember when that trade happened, it was very quickly, it went from like, oh man, they got Perkins, awesome, to like, oh man, Perkins looks like he runs with army boots on, like he's just so, it's hard for him to move. But yeah, I don't know. Where are you at with Scott Brooks, Kevin?
So you got to give him some points for that final run. It was a young team. They definitely had that upstart feel to them. And I think I agree with you on development. Like, there are 4 players that came out of that system that were like incredible players. But part of that, related to that, is sort of in his defense, is that it must be impossible to manage that many guys who know they're that good. Like, you have 3, Harden wasn't quite there at the time, but you have 3 MVPs on your team. And like, you're telling them all to like relax, and they haven't had their superstar contracts yet. It's kind of like, I don't think any of those guys were able to turn off the part of their mind where they're like, I got to look out for my entire career here.
Right.
You can't always count on that from a young guy who hasn't gotten their payday, who hasn't established that they are a household name, all that stuff. And you can go forward as like, oh, we're that team, but I mean, ask the Hawks how that goes.
Maybe a counter argument to that, and I think that's a really good point. But like, Harden's a head case to a certain extent as a player. Westbrook's a head case to a certain extent as a player. Durant is. Ibaka is not. But they all came out of the same system, and that was a system that Scott Brooks implemented. Like, what was he? Why are all the stars that come out of that program? Why do they all have that sense of entitlement or lack of team commitment?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. And I would also say to that point, McCready, it's not like he's pumped out the role players either. So it's not like he has a whole breadth of different talent. I guess for me too, just as like a throwing a bone to Brooks is them beating San Antonio and in the playoffs, and also taking Golden State to 7. Obviously the pre-Durant Golden State. Those are just two of the most impressive series I've ever seen coached. So I think he's just associated with those series to me, like outcoaching Pop and almost outcoaching Kerr. I think is a pretty big notch on your belt. But I think he's fairly appropriately ranked. Let's move on to number 17. Maddie, would you give me the beautiful sting? McCready, let's go with you on this one first.
Right.
This guy's good. I think he was a fun person to judge for me because he's been through so many different eras. He's also been an assistant a lot. But Alvin Gentry, number 17, coming in with a 24.2.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there is a disciple in the league of Mike D'Antoni, it would probably be like Alvin Gentry. Yeah, he worked under Larry Brown. He worked under a few other different people. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go with,
he was also part of the Warriors teams.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Steve Kerr's main guy, right?
Yep, that's true. Yeah, I mean, he's been out of the Warriors since 2015, but I mean, he was there kind of getting things going. As the NBA, he didn't win a championship there. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's okay, but I mean, I don't know. It's not like I felt like he's done an okay job with the Pelicans this year, but I also feel like the Pelicans kind of underachieved this year. Like they had a lot of depth, and sure, losing what's his name, Zion for most of the year is very challenging. But if you look at like the depth of that team under positions, it's pretty good. I guess the center is a little bit weak, but I don't know. I think he's okay. I don't really have too many things to say about Alvin Gentry, and if I had to cast him as something. He'd be like a boss with a heart of gold in the office.
Ha! He really would.
He does give off that vibe of just being a good guy to work for.
I mean, that's pretty much all a coach is. So maybe that's like some of the easiest casting I've done so far, but I'll keep it at
probably important. I'll say with Alvin Gentry, I feel like he's one of those guys that he's come close to fully implementing his ideas, but also it's, his experience has largely had to, he's had to tailor his teams around big time personalities who are kind of like bigger than who he is. And, he hasn't had like a D'Antoni Nash thing or a Kerr, a Kerr Curry type thing. I think AD, he didn't quite have that with him, and Zion's another chance. But I think he's one of those people where if his fortunes changed a little bit, he could be a championship coach, and we would talk about him very differently.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a D'Antoni Nash thing, but he had a Gentry Nash thing. Like that Suns team that lost to the Lakers in the conference finals, that was like, that could have been a championship team right there.
For sure, no.
A little better for them.
That was with Gentry?
Yeah,
he coached the Suns for 4 years. So, I mean, it was like right before the rebuild. So if everyone, I don't know if people remember like when Goran Dragic's coming out party, that was all Alvin Gentry. It was kind of like when D'Antoni left the Suns, I think right around the time that I think maybe they lost Stoudemire as well. But
yeah, it was when the ownership in the Suns was like, I'm not spending any money on anyone being any good.
Yeah, and exactly.
Gentry was like, fine, we'll make do. And
I love owners that come in when a team is super successful and just destroy it immediately. Like Fertitta or whatever his name is, like doing the exact same thing with the Rockets.
Is it the Rockets guy? Yeah. Oh, baby, ruining a good thing. Actually, you know what? This guy, okay, that's a perfect segue because this guy, I thought for sure did not have a chance in hell, but this season has been so incredible. Maddie, will you give me the sting for number 16? He's coached on a couple different teams, but he's coaching on one of the best teams in the NBA right now. Kevin Dowse. What do you think about 27 out of 40, Frank Vogel?
I love Frank Vogel. Those two runs with the Pacers were masterful. Paul George becoming a superstar under his watch, giving the Raptors some scares in that first round series where Paul George went supernova on us. I'm really happy that he's making some hay in LA. I was pretty concerned when he was hired and Jason Kidd was his assistant that like if things didn't go well in the first month, he was going to be fired. But he definitely, it's so funny because he revolutionized defense for like a season before big men were obsolete, which I thought was hilarious. Like the whole principle of verticality thing was just stifling and then immediately meaningless.
But that's kind of an interesting observation considering how big LA is playing right now and how effective it is.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I think for me, before I throw it to you, McCready, I'll just say that Vogel's one of those guys I think who was really hurt by his job in between jobs. If he just had what happened with the Pacers, I think he would be viewed with like a much higher kind of like in much higher regard. But obviously, he took the Magic job, and it wasn't great there, I don't think. And a lot of players went through there that I feel like the Magic didn't really recognize were talented, like Oladipo and Sabonis, if I'm not mistaken. They might have even traded Tobias Harris on his watch. So, I mean, it's hard to tell how bad the ownership is or whatever. But again, he's doing great with the Lakers. And with LeBron, people are always going to attribute, I think, less to LeBron's coaches, fair or not fair. But is what it is, right? He's doing very, very good. McCready, what do you have to say about Frank Vogel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like again, like huge mixed bag. I think you kind of nailed it a little bit, Freddie. Like if the Orlando thing hurts them for me for sure. I feel like if the only job he ever had was with Orlando, he would never get hired again.
Yeah, totally.
He went like 54 and 110. Like that's pretty bad. And like those teams, like people were like, these teams could be frisky. They
had some players.
Mentality. Yeah, I mean, he's doing a good job with the Lakers. Kind of small sample size, if you ask me. Having Davis and James on the same team, both incredibly and surprisingly healthy throughout the entire year.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to mess that up.
Pretty hard to kind of mess that up. And he's got Denny Green, who's like the perfect third complementary player. Don't have too much to say about Vogel other than there's a French photojournalist named Frank Vogel, Vogel maybe, and that they have nearly the same name except there is a C in Frank.
Is this? You know what? It is real, isn't it? I was gonna guess like that's not real, but it is.
That is real. That is real.
You got some good in between real and fake stuff, I gotta say.
If I had to cast Frank Vogel, I'm going to go back to an Office Space type of thing, and he's kind of like a Toby type in The Office, just like a tertiary at best character who makes appearances every once in a while and isn't particularly liked by the main character, but for not a really good reason.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, well, I think we've made it to number 15. We've made it halfway on this giant ultimate Confederacy of Dunks coach ranking list.
Looking forward to the 6-part edition of this podcast that you released.
That's right. Duncan, what say you?
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the bottom 15 of our special Coaches Ranking episode. If you're wearing a shirt, tuck it in. Stay tuned tomorrow for part 2, the top 15 in our Coaches Rankings.